Hello again, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the Nautilus, Drydocks.com. I got another project to share with you. This is a British nuclear submarine. It's kind of cool. I'm excited to share it with you. What you have before you is a British Trafalgar Class nuclear submarine. This is the class of submarine that was just preceding the new Artful or Astute class submarines that the British are building right now. Originally, these boats entered service in the 1970s. I believe almost all of them, except perhaps two, have been retired in favor of the new designs. They're not massive submarines. They're 280 feet long, and they've got a 32-foot beam to it. This particular model was put out by a company called Shearline out of the United Kingdom that's unfortunately no longer around, but a company called Beck's Model Marine has reinvigorated the line, and these are once again available for purchase from them. The actual submarines were armed with 5 torpedo tubes, and this model is rendered in 1/64th scale, which means it is 54 inches in overall length. This is a great size to me because it's got a lot of beam, but it's not tremendously long. So as you'll see, there's lots of room inside for some really cool things. So let's take a look. You know what, before we tear into the inside of the boat, let's just take a look at the outside because it is really cool. Such a unique shape to the front of these boats. This front little lip is such a neat feature on these boats and easily make it recognizable as a British offering. Notice all of these tiles have all been individually scribed, all of these anechoic tiles. In the real boat, these forward dive planes were retractable. They're not rendered that way in this particular boat. What we've got on top here is a full array of masts and periscopes. This one here was modified somewhat to accommodate the 2.4 gigahertz antenna. The new owner can obviously paint, these mast shafts a stainless color and do the same with this brass tube just to clean things up. We got one hole right here I want to point out because that is the one and only hold down point for the upper hull. That basically bolts down to the cylinder and keeps the upper hull in place. Moving to the back here, some interesting features. We got this beautiful ducted propeller in here. It's not really a pump jet, but it is like a ducted fan style propulsor in the back of the boat. The other neat thing about this and all of the other Shearline products is that the upper rudder is actually integrated into the upper hull, and there's no seam like you would typically see right here to mar the cosmetics of the boat, and that makes for some interesting linkages inside. Let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. Access to the interior, as I mentioned previously, was via this one stainless bolt. Goes right through this hole. You take that out, and now you just lift up on the bow, slide everything forward. There's the linkage for the stern planes that you disconnect, and it's got a little hook there. You see? I can move the upper rudder. That hook drops down into this receptacle for the rudder, and that's how the upper and lower rudders are all linked together. Before we get on the inside, let's show you the inside of the upper hull here, just to show you what we've got going on. The sail's completely removable with these nuts, and the whole sail comes off for transport to make sure that it doesn't get damaged. Got some flotation foam up in here, and of course the linkage for the rudder. Now we can go ahead, let's start at the back of the boat and we'll work our way forward. We got our ducted propeller, and that moves through this double jointed, it's actually a 90-degree universal joint. The reason the previous owner did that, I think, was because this shaft and this shaft were not perfectly aligned. This universal joint takes that alignment into play and makes sure that you get a perfectly smooth connection between the shaft output from the motor and the shaft for the propeller. We got our two rear dive planes here, obviously. The neat thing about this setup, and I've seen this with Ken Griffin, who was the original builder of this boat, this is a fairly common methodology that he uses, are these triple connectors in here. So you can see you've got your one main shaft that runs to the servo output, and then a secondary shaft that runs to the other dive plane. But both of them are completely adjustable by just loosening off these set screws. And he's got that point here, and obviously here as well. So there's tremendous adjustability, which is something that not enough builders build into their boats, the ability to adjust the position and throw of their control surfaces. Moving up over here, we've got our outputs. These are bellows seals that go into the watertight cylinder. This is a 4 1/4 inch, roughly 4.3 inch diameter watertight cylinder from OTW. We got some features in here. We've got a 2.4 gigahertz receiver, a Subtech APC4, which is a very old style pitch controller, but works exceptionally well. We've got our sealed ballast tank in here. This is a pump style ballast system, and you can see that right here. There's the main gear pump that drives water in and out, and this solenoid valve is in line to pinch off that connection so that when that tank is full and pressurized, the water doesn't flow back and out of the model. Underneath is a dive controller module that controls all of that. And then in the front we've got power connections. You can see the positive lead's been disconnected, and the negative lead is connected with this thumb screw. I'm just going to go ahead and take this off because we are going to take the cylinder out and show you what that looks like. So installing and taking the cylinder out isn't as quick as a lot of the other models that you see, but these connections and hold downs are absolutely rock solid, and you do not need to worry about anything coming undone at the pond because of the solid physical connection between all of these surfaces. So I'm going to start by taking this clamp off. There's two of them, one in the front, one in the back. There's a gigantic stainless steel hose clamp. You have one in the front and one in the back. The trick is you want to make sure that you don't over tighten this, obviously, because this could put a lot of force on that acrylic cylinder and end up cracking it. The other thing I will say, you want to make sure you watch your fingers, keep it away from the cylinder, otherwise it'll scratch up the outside, and that's already kind of starting to happen there a little bit. So we did our forward one. We'll get our rear one. These, if this was an issue for the new owner, could be replaced with Velcro. Simple Velcro straps, and it would work perfectly fine. Now what we need to do is find the set screw wrenches, and we're going to be removing the... Alright, we're ready to disconnect the linkages. Super easy. I recommend taking this one off. Now you'll see I've got a wheel collar on there, and that's done so that every time you slip this linkage on and off, it goes back on at the exact same position again. It was there, and it's also on this one. Just loosen that off, and now that's disconnected there as well. We'll move to the front, loosen this, that slips off. Now that's all disconnected. The battery is disconnected. In theory, if I've disconnected, oh no, we have to do the drive shaft here as well. One quick twist, that gets loosened off. So now I'm going to pick the cylinder up at the front, slide it forward, and the whole cylinder is now out of the boat. So let's take a look inside now that we've got some room. We got some nice big drain holes that we put in this. There's a lot of water that fills this hull, and previously there was only these little tiny 1/4 inch diameter holes. You want to have that water being able to enter and leave the model as quickly as possible, especially for a boat of this size. Got a lot of ballast weights in here that help provide a lot of stability, and we've got a gigantic nickel metal hydride battery pack that's permanently affixed to the hull. This can be charged through these leads. Like I said, 12 volt nickel metal hydride for charging purposes. All right, I want to show you guys all of the functions of the boat to make sure that it's working properly. Before we button the boat back up again, we obviously need to install this 2.4 gigahertz antenna into this high mast right there. And I think we showed this to you earlier, but basically what we're going to want to do is this antenna goes right in this hole. And that gets fed up the antenna all the way to the top until it just sticks out. You want to make sure that the antenna is all the way out the top, because this brass will shield RF signals from getting to that 2.4 gigahertz antenna. Before every run at the pond, we're going to do obviously a bench test, so I'm just going to turn the radio on, and you power up the model. The negative is connected, and now we just plug it in. We got a red light in the receiver, which means in theory it's listening to the transmitter, and we can start checking functions. So we got throw on our rudder. We got override commands for the stern planes, and those, of course, are on an automatic pitch controller, so you can see those responding to the pitch of the boat. Got our throttle, nice and smooth through the entire range there. Up in the front, we got our forward dive planes going. And then the last thing is the pump. Now I'm just going to run this for a second because you do not run this pump dry. There we go. The other thing I want to show you, now the pump is on switch C here right now, so this would be to dive. But when I try and surface, nothing happens. And the reason for that is because built into this system are some probes in the ballast tank, so it knows basically where the water is. If it's all the way empty, it won't allow it to empty more, and if it's all the way full, it won't allow it to fill anymore. So those probes are really important, and they're a great feature to stop inadvertently running the pump for too long in the boat. Last thing I want to talk about is what happens when that antenna goes below the surface of the water. So if you're not really paying attention and that antenna dips below, radio waves can't penetrate, these high frequency waves can't penetrate the water, they just bounce off the top. So the boat basically becomes autonomous at that point, and we built functionality into it so it knows what to do. So at this point, we're going to simulate a loss of signal event by turning off the transmitter. So we're going to have the boat moving along at about 1/3 throttle, 1/4 throttle, something like that. We're driving along, minding our own business under the water, and whoops, antenna dips below, so we're going to turn the radio off and see what happens. So immediately what we see here is the stern planes have gone to full rise. They're going to push the stern down. Up in the front, the bow planes have gone to full surface. So it's going to drive that up. What we don't hear is the pump going, and that is, of course, because the ballast tank is empty and it's not allowing, but that would begin pumping the ballast water out and bring the model back up to the surface as well. So we've got three things that are going to work to bring the boat back up: stern planes, the forward planes, and the ballast tank. And then, of course, the throttle goes to 0 so that the model won't continue along under the water without any guidance. As soon as that antenna pops back up above the surface of the water, about a 2-second delay, and we're back to normal operation once again. So there you go, an overview of the layout and internal components of this RC submarine. Of course, what you're waiting for is the pond footage, and we got some good stuff for you. The Drydocks has invested in a new camera drone. We tried it out. It's our first time, so bear with us a little bit. We'll get better as time goes, but I think we caught some pretty neat footage, including a rogue attack turtle that was haunting the pond nearby the submarine as we were operating it. A few things to note about this submarine as we were operating it. It had actually surprisingly good turning performance, even in surfaced mode. I can't overly explain it because traditionally these nuclear submarines have a terrible turning radius because only one of the two rudders are engaging the water when it's in the surface trim. But this was an exception, had really good turning performance, both surfaced and submerged. It would hold periscope depth rock steady, basically hands off once you trimmed in the stern planes to get a nice level operation. The one thing that I was not stupendously impressed by was the speed. This is no speed demon. It is a very stately girl who enjoys touring the pond at a very dignified pace. So depending on the new owner and what his thoughts are about performance for his boat, he may want to swap that motor out for something a little more peppy, but certainly this boat works exceptionally well as she is laid out. So with that, we'll leave you with a few more minutes of footage from the lake. I am going to sign off. It's Bob Martin, the RC sub guy with the Nautilus, Drydocks.com. If you like what you see, please do like and subscribe. It helps me a lot. With that, I will leave you to the footage. Thanks for joining me, and we will catch you next time.